Welcome back to A-10 Live. I'm Andy Katz here at A-10 Men's Basketball Media Day at the Capital One Arena in Washington, D.C. And I'm joined now by Bernadette McGlade, the Commissioner of the Atlantic 10, a trailblazer in college athletics, discussing all things college, especially the A-10. Let's deal first with the conference. It's great that URI and St. Bonaventure are the favorites. And what I love about this league is that really 12 of the 14 teams, if you go back maybe 5 to 10 years, have had a turn near the top. So there's great mobility and gives hope to everyone. Why do you think that is the case?
Well, the parity has been unbelievable. I mean, when you look at the number of teams that have won the conference championship and then been able to earn the AQ into the NCAA, it's really been amazing. And I think it's a real tribute to tradition and the rich history at all of our A-10 schools. I mean, we are a basketball-centric league. We have coaches that are they're nationally recognized, and they're able to recruit student athletes that are staying their 4 years, working on degrees, graduating, sometimes with graduate degrees, and I think that has a lot of sustainability for a league like the Atlantic 10, and it shows in terms of our national relevance.
You know, for them to have sort of the hope that they can climb up, you know, how does that help, do you think, sort of the brand that each year, even though you may have a different team at the top, you know that the league will have, you know, teams that will be nationally competitive. It just may be a different school.
I think it helps tremendously because if you're a coach at Division I NCAA men's basketball or a student athlete that wants to compete at the highest level, you want to be in a league that has multiple opportunities to get into postseason play. You want to win your conference championship, you want to get that ring, and you want to be excited about that, but you want a shot at the national championship. And so I think that parity and that helps us to be able to recruit student athletes at a high level and also keep our coaches.
You know, the coaches love that this is a basketball-centric league, and a lot of them have been at football schools, if you will. What are the challenges, though, as the commissioner of a league that is basketball first, if you will, but maybe doesn't have the revenue of football?
Well, I think the first challenge is we'd like to get some of the revenues from the CFP. We certainly would love to get some of those dollars, but, you know, that's just not who we are. You know, we have to look at other ways to generate revenue, which is obviously playing at a high level in terms of the men's basketball, getting into the NCAA championship, being able to earn units, and then our media partners have been critically important. Obviously, ESPN, CBS Sports, NBC, that media rights package is important for the Atlantic 10, even more important when you don't have football to be able to package with it. And then in addition to that, our men's championship, being here in a major city like Washington, D.C. in the district and at the Capital One Arena. As you know, we had a 4-year stint at Barclays. We were in Pittsburgh last year and we'll return to Brooklyn at Barclays. They are important revenue bases for this league that not only support men's basketball, but our other 21 championships.
You know, you handled this, I thought, marvelously. I'm not just saying this, you know, where it was a little dicey at what was going to happen with Brooklyn, you know, with the ACC coming in for a couple of years. Take me back to that time where you had to say, okay, where are we going to be? And then you ended up at Pittsburgh and DC, and how that sort of all played out.
Well, it played out, as you know, I had a long tenure in the ACC and have worked a long time with John Swafford. Also, Brett Euromark at Barclays, fabulous, not only colleague, but personal friend as well. And the ACC really wanted to get into New York. We knew that. And so we had remaining time on our contract with Barclays. But I thought it was an opportunity for us to be able to partner with the ACC and with Barclays where we all came out winning. We were able to secure a great contract with Pittsburgh and here in Washington, D.C. And then on top of it, we were able to get a 3-year extension to go back to Barclays for 19, 20, and 21. So it worked out well for the A-10. We were able to move the championship around our footprint, but yet get a 3-year extension. And so I think all parties ended up pretty happy after the negotiation.
So you moved the conference office from Philly to Virginia. This is in Washington, D.C. What is it about this footprint within the Atlantic 10 that you think will turn out to be very successful in March?
Well, the proximity of all of our schools and our fans is, you know, everyone knows their geography. I mean, you have some of our top programs in VCU and Richmond and Davidson, and now they're just, you know, their fans are a car drive away. They're not having to jump on airplanes, et cetera, which really helps as you play a conference championship. It's 5 days. And as your team continues to win, more and more fans, if they can get to the venue, will come. At the same time, it's great proximity to our northeastern corridor with our Philly schools and our Pittsburgh school and the Dayton fans. They travel anywhere for their Dayton Flyers. So, the DC market, we think is going to be extremely positive come March. In addition to that, this is probably our largest alumni base, barring New York City, for all of our A-10 alumni. So it's a huge alumni hub, as well as great proximity for our current membership.
And of course, Amtrak from Providence or Kingston, or obviously from Fordham to get down here as well. A couple other topics I'm curious of. First of all, the narrative right now, in college basketball was hijacked, obviously, by this FBI investigation, but it really was directed at, I don't want to say a few bad apples, but I mean, there were definitely guys that are recruiting elite level players. That tends not to happen in this conference. So how do you get the narrative back that the majority, and especially in your interest, the A-10, doesn't do business that way, if you will?
Well, I think the narrative, in some sense, it's very obvious, but in another sense, it's very hard to communicate to the general public who wants to easily take swipes at the big business of NCAA men's basketball, the road to the Final Four, the $1 billion contract. But at the end of the day, there are thousands and thousands of student athletes and institutions competing that are doing it the right way. And they're not out there doing anything that is unscrupulous or under the table or whatever. And so I think the most important thing about getting the narrative back is to continue to do what you do well. To continue to put your coaches and your student athletes at the forefront. I'm excited. We made a decision this past summer to bring our student athletes to Media Day. They're going to be here at the luncheon. As you know, they're going to have a platform to be able to talk about some of the salient issues in men's basketball. And when this story broke a couple weeks ago, that didn't worry us. We didn't decide to take them off of the program. We're going to let them have their platform. We're going to have them share their thoughts of what they think about the landscape. And so I think it's continuing to do what you're doing right and doing well, and not get sidetracked and not get hijacked by a couple of very major crises that we're facing right now in Division I men's basketball. I don't think you can ignore it, but you can't let it consume you.
So on campus, and I've talked to a lot of the coaches about this, while the player is there, they get great health care, free education, stipend, good food, athletic training, guardrails for academic tutoring where it's kind of hard to veer off. So those are all positives.
Right.
Where is the sort of happy medium that they can, if they want a little bit more, because they shouldn't say they get nothing because they get plenty, but where are you as a commissioner as to what maybe would be palatable to give them a little bit more to sort of find that balance?
Well, I have been a fan. I've been an outspoken advocate of the student athletes and everyone being able to really control their name, image, and likeness. And I do think that if you have a young person that we see, and we all came through colleges, we had wild and crazy ideas, whether it was to start a t-shirt company or anything like that. I think that the student athlete should be able to control that entrepreneurial spirit, so to speak, while they can also then be proud of being an athlete if they've earned that right and they're on the team and they're competing and everything's being done the right way. So I think there should be some common ground to allow that to be a shared opportunity, and maybe we shouldn't be quite so rigid with the rules in that regard. At the same time, I am also not a proponent of the straight out pay for play. I think that totally would erode the entire model that we have, not only for our premier sports of men's basketball and football, so to speak, but for all the other sports. I think the imbalance would simply become too great, and it would really hurt the enterprise.
I mean, let's be clear on something. Just because if you were to pay players, because I've heard people say this, the people that were alleged to have committed these unethical things and potentially criminal, they knew what they were doing, at the very least committing NCAA violations.
Right.
So by paying the players, that's not going to eliminate certain people that want to do something that is unethical.
Exactly.
There is each school now has the opportunity to sort of, add to the scholarship, if you will. It's up to each institution. I mean, is there a number, that works, to put money literally in the pocket of an athlete? And if you have to do that, how much do you have to balance with Title IX and all the other sports?
Well, there is a number, and I think, sometimes everyone thinks that intercollegiate athletics, that we're working in this vacuum, unrelated to colleges or universities. But as you know, you've got children, you've been to colleges and universities. There's a huge financial machine, a financial aid operation that actually does this infamous cost of attendance. And so they calculate, so the student athletes that's here at GW, if they're from California, their actual cost of attendance is higher than the student that's going to GW that was born and raised and lives as a resident of the district. And so I think they accommodate for the different amounts of what kind of extra dollars a student can have and actually use in a very necessary way when they're going through their undergraduate enrollment. So I think we have to stick to that. I think we also have to allow for this opportunity to earn this additional income as long as it's a legitimate job and earning operation, and it's nothing that's sort of a smoke and screens out there.
What should be the role of the NCAA?
Well, I think the primary role of the NCAA obviously is to give this huge umbrella of governance, and as you used the term earlier, some fence posts around what it is that's permissible, permissible and not permissible. In addition to that, what the NCAA, and they do it very well in terms of hosting championships, and I think there's something like 81 national championships for student athletes of every sport and every level, whether it's Division I, II, or III. I think in terms of honors and recognition and be able to help with the continuing education and the character building of the students that are going to their colleges and universities. I think the NCAA needs to be cautious about, kind of tiptoeing too closely into what we deem as institutional control issues that are managed on an institution, and these are major entities, as you know, these large land-grant institutions, even the institutions in the Atlantic 10, they have huge foundations, they have thousands of undergraduate student athletes, of which their athletic department is just one small unit. 9 female Division I commissioners, if I'm correct, out of 32. What do you think of that number? I think that's great. When I was hired in 2008, I was at the ACC and I accepted the commissioner's job at the Atlantic 10, and at that point in time I was only the 3rd female commissioner, and then one had just retired, so there was really only 2 of us, and we actually talked a lot and shared a lot of
who was that
ideas. Carolyn Femovich was at the Patriot League.
Okay.
And so since then, to see I'm starting, believe it or not, my 10th year, that now there's almost a third of the 32 conferences, almost 10 are female commissioners, I think is a great acknowledgement by the president's councils, and I think they see that diversity is important and that you have to have a certain skill set to be able to be a commissioner, and it doesn't necessarily have to align with gender. And I think that's critically important. And so it's good. It's good news. I'm
still waiting, though, for one to crack the Power 5. I mean, because that's sort of a men's club and has been.
Yes.
These are sort of football-driven conferences. How critical do you think it will be to get a female in charge of one of those high-profile conferences?
Well, I think it's realistic. The first thing we have to do is get one of those 5 to retire.
Yes.
Great
job.
That's right. I don't know that the job's going to come open soon. But I think that in terms of qualifications, I know, again, folks talk about, having to have experience in football. And when I was at Georgia Tech for 17 years and I oversaw football, we won a national championship. I worked with Bobby Ross and George O'Leary, and, this was a daily responsibility. And so, again, being able to be the commissioner of one of the Power 5s, versus just, like the A-10 being a basketball centric, I think has to do with your skill set. It doesn't have to do with your gender, and I think there are, qualified individuals, and I think that there will be a commissioner in the Power 5. The key is getting someone to retire.
So in this decade of service here as leading the league, there's been some critical decisions, talk about the tournament, but also in terms of alignment. As you look back in the 10 years, what are the decisions that you say, I got that one right, or maybe this one, maybe if I could do that one again.
Well, I think that we really maneuvered realignment well. The institutions that left the A-10 during my tenure were in essence kind of out of our control. We had Temple and Charlotte that really had to make the move, because of their football program. They needed a home for BCS football. And then when you had the crazy
there's no way Temple would have left if it wasn't a football issue.
I agree. I agree. And I still think Temple is still a great fit for the A-10.
Right.
So, but again, and then the crazy split with the Big East, how that whole thing came down was really, something that was somewhat out of our control. We knew it was coming down the pike. So I think we did our homework, and I think that the institutions we brought in were the best of the best. When you look at VCU, Mason, Davidson, and so the A-10 really stayed strong. So I feel really good about all of that. I feel good about our decision when we made the move to jump out of a smaller arena in a small community like Atlantic City to take our premier championship to Brooklyn in a brand new Barclays Center. Probably the only thing I wish I would have done different was signed a 10-year contract instead of a 5-year contract. But again, it's worked in our favor because we negotiated the pop out and jump back in, and we were able to extend that at least through 7.
So, one thing, I've talked to Gonzaga Coach Mark Few about this. I mean, they're a national program, elite. The rest of their sports aren't, and the rest of their sports probably should stay in the Northwest and the West Coast. He wouldn't mind seeing his program be a national program at that level, but you got to balance because you have one athletic department. How far away are we from, at some point, having sort of regional leagues, for the most part, for non-revenue, and then keep it national or spread out for the sort of the money-driving sports?
Well, I think first off, we like to call them Olympic championships, not non-revenue. So I don't think we're that far away, and I do think that's a model that can work because the old adage like the world is flat. And right now, our men's programs, they're competing at the highest level. I mean, they're chartering in and out.
Right.
They're jumping on a charter plane, they're going an hour, and if you jump on a charter plane and go 4 hours, you're going to play your competition and charter back. And I do think that it makes sense to protect the regional model for the Olympic sports, not only for the experience of the student athletes, but also for the support of the universities. And this whole family and friends that support their children, their athletes, and their universities. So I'm a proponent that I think we should look at, as commissioners, as presidents, and at all the different conferences, to really look at maybe reinventing this model. And maybe that's one of the things that could come out of this soul searching that the NCAA, which is really all of us as members, is going through right now.
I mean, I don't want to dismiss like St. Louis's Olympic programs or Rhode Island, but it just makes sense that St. Louis in soccer, whatever, should be playing in their region rather than getting on a plane, and the same Rhode Island should be playing New England schools. Just for those sports, it would make sense. And financially, I would have to think, where everyone is trying to check their bottom line, that ultimately that could be a driving force.
It could be. And we did an interesting thing this past year with our spring sports. We brought both tennis championships and golf together in Orlando, and we had this spring festival where they were all together, and it was amazing, the interaction of the student athletes. And so if you did that in a regular season, these are kids that are turning into young adults that have played all of their sports during junior high and high school. They all know each other, and you put them all in this regional competitive experience, and it was amazing to see the interaction, and we hadn't seen that before when we kept them all separate. So I do think there's a lot of merit to the concept that you're talking about right now.
I just want to finish up on the tournament here. There's a lot of debate with the selection committee about the Saturday, Sunday, and I know it's television driven, and you do get a different window and sometimes a higher profile window when you are on Sunday because there are fewer games. But I know the committee also doesn't like that. So how have you balanced, dealing with maybe coaches that want it on a Saturday versus the television partner saying, look, we got this window for you on Sunday, in terms of, what is better for the overall conference maybe going forward in the NCAA tournament?
Right, that's a great question, and it's a question that a lot of people don't know the history on. As you recall, or I'm sure you recall it, the A-10 used to finish on Saturday. And then we had the opportunity, and during my tenure, where CBS came to the A-10 and we were able to do a sub-license with ESPN to put the A-10 championship on CBS network on Sunday. in the 1 o'clock window. Extremely important, extremely valuable, and we did it. Once we did that, then it was a couple years later when all of a sudden the NCAA expanded to 68 and we had the first 4.
Right.
Now we have Tuesday games, not Thursday games. So it's a real factor that we talk about. We have to balance it, because now we finish, and if we conceivably have a team that's in the first 4, that's a turnaround of Sunday afternoon to Tuesday night that didn't exist 8 years ago. So it's a delicate dance right now. It's a delicate balance, and we're trying to weigh the value of the network exposure to work well with our TV partners, and at the same time to give the best opportunities to our teams and our student athletes.
To that point, I think the committee should mandate that if you play on Sunday, you don't play till Wednesday.
Right, I agree. You
All
tell them
those things.
that.
I will. All right. Well, Bernadette McGlade, the Commissioner of the Atlantic 10, in her 10th year heading this conference. We're going to be back with players coming up. The 5 first-team players from the Atlantic 10 here on A-10 Live at A-10 Men's Basketball Media Day here in Washington, D.C. Stay with us.